Good afternoon, and welcome to yet another extremely topical and extremely timely Emet webinar. Yesterday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that, quote, UNRWA is totally infiltrated by Hamas. It has been in the service of Hamas and in schools and in many other things. I say this with great regret because we hope that there will be an objective and a constructive body to offer aid. UNRWA is not that body. As most of you are aware from reading the Wall Street Journal and other reports, the United Nations Relief Work Agency, UNRWA, has certainly been in the news lately. UNRWA was established on December 8, 1949, to be able to service the approximately 700,000 Palestinian refugees of Israel's 1948 War of Independence. UNRWA boasts on its website that it is one of the largest agencies of the UN, employing some 30,000 people, at least 10% of which, according to Hillel Neuer of UN Watch, are members of Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad. And of course, we all know from the Wall Street Journal report of January 29th that at least 12 UNRWA employees were directly involved in the October 7th brutal massacres. This has led the United States, followed by 17 other countries, including the European Union, to at least temporarily suspend their funding to UNRWA. On December 14, 1950, the UN High Commission of Refugees was established in the wake of World War II in order to deal with the massive number of European refugees that had been displaced. Its job is to quickly resettle the refugees in their host nations, help them attain citizenship and jobs. Its website says that it has, quote, helped tens of millions of people to restart their lives. There, as opposed to UNRWA, is no passage of refugee status from one generation to another. As opposed to UNRWA, which keeps people in refugee camps and feeds upon a psychology of victimhood, forever teaching generation upon generation that they'll go home to their great-great-great-grandfathers' homes in Haifa, Jerusalem, or Tel Aviv, on ad perpetuity, that all of Israel, as the ubiquitous saying goes, from the river to the sea is Palestine, and teaches them the glories of being a shaheed or martyr. The Palestinians are the only one ethnic group that have their own agency, and one that cuts open and repeatedly festers the original wounds of 1948. As we'll see from our esteemed guest, UNRWA schools and summer camps are routinely train the young children below the age of 15 in military combat. This is against both national and international law. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to David Bedein, who has been working on these issues for decades upon decades now. David is the director of the Center for Near East Policy Research. He has been studying in depth the schools and the summer camps run by UNRWA for the last 35 years. David had just testified before the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee on January 9th, 2024. And now it is my profound pleasure to bring to you David Bedein. David?
Thank you very much. This is a wonderful thing that Emet has gotten involved with this issue, because it's not going to go away. UNRWA is not going to go away. There's unfortunately no way to cancel UNRWA, because it's ensconced in a decision of the General Assembly, as Sarah just pointed out, from 1948 till this moment. And even if we try to replace it with UNHCR, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, which would be logical, it's not possible, because what I found when I addressed the United Nations Correspondents Association several years ago with the 4 experts that I work with, we found out that there's a bylaw that forbids one UN agency from taking the place of another. But all is not lost, because the donor nations to UNRWA can make their voices heard. Now, the way and I'm going to mention very specific issues that if you're a citizen of a nation that gives money to UNRWA, you can do a lot. UNRWA is afraid of your feedback. However, the people who can take the feedback and carry it through in the U.S. Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate and in the House, as we have done over the years. I've been about 12 times in DC with our staff, and we present facts. We don't present opinions. And what's very important is we find out what's going on inside UNRWA. We have 2 journalists placed inside UNRWA. And we also work with Arab journalists who do filming of the summer camps and of the schools. You can see our website, israelbehindthenews.com or cfnepr.com. Let me repeat that. UNRWA, israelbehindthenews.com or cfnepr.com. You'll see on the top the movies that we made. Now, I've been asked often, now I started this issue first, so before I say anything more, my involvement in UNRWA goes back 55 years. When I was a senior in high school at a Hebrew Academy in Philadelphia, we had a teacher who said, look, now, a teacher visiting from Israel, now the issue of the refugees is in our hands. That inspired my aliyah, my moving to Israel 2 years later, as a very practical thing to get involved with. And I also knew the American Friends Service Committee in Philadelphia, a respected peace organization, who were given responsibilities by the American government to make sure that in the wake of the Six-Day War and the fact that the refugee camps were in our hands, that there would be peaceful atmosphere there. And they more or less stayed with that until 1988 when the PLO took over UNRWA. Now, that was the first problem we had with UNRWA in terms of UNRWA becoming in a sense, a hostile force to Israel. Now, what's very important to know is that the donor nations do have an address which we discovered called the RWG, the Refugee Working Group. It hasn't been activated, but it should be activated, because whenever we bring now, what our agency has done, we have commissioned studies of all the school books. In addition to filming the schools, you can see our studies on our website, israelbehindthenews.com or cfnepr.com, as it says in the notice behind me. And our experts have been through more than 1,000 school books. A prominent rabbi asked me, would you please maybe find, is there one expression for peace? We'll use it. Well, I wish there was. It would make my life a lot easier, because I don't want to be, as a professional, I'm actually a social work professional, I do not want to be the guy who's saying there's only war, because in my other hat, as a person engaged in dialogue with Jews and Arabs throughout my career in Israel, which is 53 years, I don't think that every Arab is for war. However, UNRWA, that is their position. Now, what UNRWA has done has been to adopt the Palestine Liberation Organization theme, which is full-fledged war for Israel, war against Israel. And in the year 2000, well, before the year 2000, when the new school books came out, I met Yasser Arafat at the suggestion of a prominent rabbi who was engaged in dialogue. And I asked Arafat about when he's going to say words of peace in Arabic. And he said, well, he says he does so all the time. I said, Mr. Arafat, I have no record of such. So he then said, you must see my new school books. So we took him up on that. And we have a standing order at the Palestinian Ministry of Education to get all their school books. And we have. And again, take a look at the translations, take a look at our analysis. And one of the most egregious books that they put out is this book here, which you can see it reviewed on our site, with a dedication to Dalal al-Mughrabi, a woman who carried out a terror attack in 1978, murdering more than 35 people, including 13 children. Now, when we showed this to Guterres, and his staff, the Secretary General of the United Nations, he told UNRWA to get rid of the book, and they did for 4 years. And then it was put out again, and you can't quite see it here, but trust me, it's here, 2023 edition, to make sure that everyone knows that this is still their position. No nation that gives money to UNRWA has asked that this book be removed. Now, that's an example of something you can do, because the question is, David Bedein is telling us all this stuff. What can we do? Well, if you're a citizen of any of the nations that give to UNRWA, now one of them is the U.S., it's leading. Number 2 is Germany. Now, we had some success. There is good news, because in both with both Democrats and Republicans, they created something called the U.S. UNRWA Accord. What's that? The U.S. UNRWA Accord declares that the United States will give money to UNRWA only if it cancels its curriculum. Well, because they didn't cancel the curriculum, then for 2.5 years, they didn't get any money. And remember, the fact that it was money that was allocated was not UNRWA couldn't access it. It went crazy. Now, only recently has UNRWA started allowing the money to come across again, and that's because of the Gaza war and Israel trying to find a way to get humanitarian aid. So again, that's an issue, how Israel is going to get humanitarian aid across to the other side. So the idea of using UNRWA was the idea that has been proposed. So we'll see if that comes through. But again, the credibility of UNRWA is very, very, very low on these issues. Now, one of the most important studies that I was involved in carrying out in the 1980s was a study of medical products, medical assistance, medicines that came to Gaza, to UNRWA, and never got there. And the head of health services at that time in Gaza helped us out. His name was Dr. Lash, and Dr. Eli Lash actually he broke through. He says, I must be working for the Mossad because what I've done seems to be a military secret, because he was credited by the World Health Organization with reducing infant mortality to zero. He says, I must be working for the Mossad because no one knows that. Okay, but that is sometimes things that are good news, but no one knows about it because it doesn't fit the narrative. So there's many things that you can do if you're a citizen of a nation that gives money to UNRWA. Now, let me go back a little bit. In 1991, there was something called the Madrid Peace Conference. Now, the Madrid Peace Conference, which everyone was a part of, that was still when Shamir was prime minister and Bush was the president of the United States. 28 donor countries to UNRWA got together, and they were supposed to carry out a system which is still on the books. It hasn't been implicated. It hasn't been applied yet. And that is one of the most important things, that all the donations would look at different aspects of UNRWA and relate to them. Unfortunately, the Oslo process canceled all that. In other words, came before that the people pushing the Oslo process, let's take care of the political situation first, and this was put on hold. Well, following the Gaza war, and there will be investigations of how Hamas got so strong and how they got so much military equipment and how the tunnels were built. Basically, there was no supervision of little supervision of products coming in, and that is one of the issues that will be dealt with. Now, the issues of what happens to the school teachers. Well, our agency was the first agency in 2009, we got a grant from the European Parliament to cover the elections in UNRWA. And when they elected Hamas and Islamic Jihad to run their unions, well, the Canadian government pulled out, and that caused caused a lot of problems with UNRWA. Oh my God, so Canada pulled out, and it was hopefully going to be a precedent, but there wasn't a precedent, unfortunately. But that was something that was a very, very good example of what happens when you act. Now, interesting enough, one of our most enthusiastic supporters was Archbishop Pietro Sambi, who was the Pope's ambassador, but he was the ambassador, of course, under the tutelage of Pope John Paul II, who demanded that the Catholic Church get involved in stopping any aspect of anti-Semitism. He was the first one. The Pope John Paul II, at his request, he was the first one to get the school books. And when he saw the school books, he made it a direct appeal to the Italian government to pull all their money out, which is very, very important. And we had that precedent. I think any of you who are scholars of Catholicism or in touch with the Vatican, look him up. Now, we came to Washington 10 years ago to make a presentation at the National Press Club with one of our scholars, Dr. Mordechai Kedar, and Archbishop Sambi was supposed to be on the panel, but he died the week before. He was a chain smoker, unfortunately, and it hurt me very, very badly because it did not have the actual person from the Catholic Church who knew what was going on. And that's it, because he was advising us all the time and giving us the moral support that we needed. And we didn't get such moral support from many Jews, but from him we got. Now, it's very important that, Sarah mentioned about UNHCR. It provides a model. And what's the model? To help people get repatriated, get resettled. And anyone here can ask UNRWA to do that. And you can do that, again, by direct connection with UNRWA and also with the committees in Congress that deal with foreign affairs. So let me move on for a moment, because the way in which we find out what's going on is with the direct contact with the people. And with our Arabic-speaking staff and with the Arabs who work with us. We set up cameras at their summer camps and in their schools. So I'd like to show you 2 films of our 24 films, which are all on our website, CFN APR or IsraelBehindTheNews.com. And I welcome the opportunity to make presentations together with our experts for any group. And thank God for Zoom, I don't have to go through flights and bookings and stuff. We can show it to you at any time, and we're happy to do so. And we're also making a movie, and for this, we're looking for private support. We're making a movie to show all the incitement that happened before October 7th, because it wasn't something that came out of nowhere. So what you see in our movies is the practice for October 7th, when we show children at the summer camps who are basically doing everything possible to do simulations of what it's like to murder Jews. So let's take a look at our 2 movies. Sarah, if you can push a button, and let's take a look.
Joseph?
I'm sorry, which in particular? There are 2.
The shorter one, the one in Oscar.
Okay, 1 second.
Thank you. I don't hear sound.
Is there sound, Joseph?
Yes, absolutely.
Let me know if you can hear it now.
Nations Relief and Works Agency,
Yes?
which benefit.
Okay.
Fine.
The Asghar refugee camp, located on the outskirts of Nablus, is one of 19 Palestinian refugee camps in Judea and Samaria, controlled and maintained by UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, which benefits from a whopping budget of $1.6 billion, flowing from 67 donor countries and 33 international NGOs. 58% of that budget funds the UNRWA school system, which emphasizes and promotes the right of return as the underlying principle for its operations. Its very reason for being.
احنا تهجرنا من يافا واليوم جايين نحكي عن حقنا بالعودة ونكافح لحد ما نرجع لأراضينا في يافا وأراضينا بحيفا والليل في الرملة. إنه راح نرجع قريبا جدا. لو شو ما يصير مش راح يصير سلام. السلام بدناش إياه.
شو بيعلموكم عن حق العودة بالمدارس؟
احنا مشروع شهادة كلنا. واحنا ولازم ندافع عن وطننا كتير. راح ناخذ حقنا والله ينتقم منهم ان شاء الله يموتوا كلهم. القدس عاصمة فلسطين وراح تضلها لنا ومش راح تتغير راح تضلها لنا. المستوطنين اللي فيها كلهم راح ينطخوا. يا توتة الدار صبرك على الزمان انجار. لابد منا نطول النسوان يابا 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 يابا. وحابة أقول لكم إنه مفتاح العودة للسادة معنا وراح نفتح يوم من الأيام في بيوتنا. مثل إني بتعلم جهدي وحق إني آخذ وطني وحرر فلسطين، يعني الناس الشهداء يعني بيقدروا يحرروا فلسطين إذا بنضلهم هيك.
أنا نور الإنسان ومديرة نادي أشبال العاصفة. إحنا كل سنة اللجنة الوطنية بتعمل نوادي صيفية في مخيم عسكر. قسمنا الأطفال ل4 مجموعات بأسماء شهدائنا في مخيم عسكر على أساسهم يضلوا حاضرين في ذهنهم وفي أفكارهم ويتعلموا منهم البطولة ويضلهم مستمرين في درب المقاومة. في عندهم يعني كل طفل مستعد يكون مشروع شهيد مقابل إنه يحافظ على المبادئ اللي إحنا مترسخة عنا. حقنا في العودة وإن شاء الله انتفاضة أقوى جاية وهدول أطفالنا هم اللي راح يبقوا.
The delusion of refugees going back to homes they left in the wake of the 1948 war, homes which are long gone, has turned into the source, the motivation, and the promoter of the armed rebellion against the Jews. Asghar is the smallest of the refugee camps in Judea and Samaria, yet stands out as the camp with the highest amount of Palestinians engaged in terror activity in relation to the number of its inhabitants, including the highest number of shaheeds, armed terrorists killed in the act of murder, and the largest number of convicts serving life imprisonment for murder.
مخيم مقاتل، مخيم مقاوم، مخيم يقدم الشهيد تلو الشهيد ومن جميع الأطياف ومن جميع الأعمار ومن جميع التوجهات.
From this refugee camp embarked the Palestinian assassin of brothers Hillel and Yagel Yaniv from Har Bracha, who were killed driving through Hawara in February 2023. It was also home to a 15-year-old terrorist who set out this past April from Askar, armed with a gun, shooting and severely injuring 2 Jews in Jerusalem. Askar is also home to the 3-man terrorist squad who, on April 7th, 2023, murdered Lucy D. and her 2 daughters, 15-year-old Rena and 20-year-old Maya, in a drive-by shooting. The perpetrators of these heinous killings are hailed today as heroes in the Askar refugee camp. As soon as the murder of this Jewish woman and her 2 young daughters became known, sweets were handed out on the streets of Askar as an expression of happiness and triumph. The funeral of Hassan Katanani, the terrorist who pulled the gun on the D family, grew into a huge rally of support, which consisted of everyone from the Askar refugee camp as they celebrated the murder of Jews and the destruction of Israel.
مين بطل المخيم؟
حسن القطراني سوى عملية لأنه أول شيء دافع عن وطنه وعن كرامته، رجع شوية من الكرامة لما هجرونا من ديورنا وبيوتنا وسيطروا على أراضينا.
مين هدول؟ مين هدول؟
إبراهيم النابلسي ووديع الحواح وعبد الله الحسني وأحمد السعدي.
مين هدول؟ مين هدول؟ ايه؟
كل مخيم أفكار، في صالح صبرا، في معاذ مصر، في حسن القطراني، في كتير شهداء. نعطي لأخوتنا المقاومين نهديهم سلام والله يحمي كل واحد مقاوم. تحية لكتيبة عسكر وكتيبة جنين وكتيبة بلاطة، هذا عمنا الله يرحمه استشهد 2022 28/10/2022.
وين استشهد؟ كيف استشهد؟
عملية على حشيش حوارة.
Posters with pictures of the killers were plastered in every corner of Askar, while songs of praise for the murderers were composed in their honor. Askar's UNRWA summer camps were even named for these murderers.
صورة البطل إبراهيم النابلسي لأنه كان مش مطارد، كان مطارد. إني بحب إبراهيم لأنه يعني كان قدوة لكل شباب نابلس، كان قدوة لكل أطفال نابلس. صورة الشهيد البطل عبد الله الحصري، 4 أيام واسمه مدمر وأسير وجريح وشهيد. أنا حبيته عشان كان مقاوم ودافع عن وطنه.
The family of Hassan Katanani was congratulated with pride and approval that their son had the honor to kill a Jewish woman and her 2 young daughters while driving in their car to meet family members during the Passover holiday. They expressed their hope and wish that the terrorist's young children would go in the footsteps of their father and merit to become holy shaheed, just like their blessed father. The terrorist's mother expressed herself in her own way.
احنا لازم نقتلهم في بلادنا، في عيالنا، في أظافرنا، ناكلهم بسناننا ناكلهم اليهود، فهم أعدائنا بالأول والآخر اليهود.
الله يكرمني ويربيهم، هالأولاد يطلعوا زي ما بده ربنا إن شاء الله، يكونوا من حفظة القرآن من الصالحين البارين إن شاء الله، مجاهدين في سبيل الله كمان. كلنا بالنهاية على هالدرب، يعني الجهاد واجب علينا.
Memorial ceremonies for holy martyrs and festivals celebrate the release of terrorists from prison, at weddings and family celebrations accompanied by shooting rifles and pistols. Hundreds of Askar youth take part in these ceremonies, including children and young adolescents, absorbing the message of blind hatred so that they too can become the killers and shaheeds of the future. The amount of weapons in the Askar refugee camp are huge. Askar now boasts at least 200 wanted terrorists just waiting to commit the next acts of murder. This is how the right of return, the reason for being of UNRWA, has become a source of lethal violence that surpasses the organization's hollow slogans for peace. The time has come for donor nations to think again about blind support for UNRWA.
Okay, allow me to say one sentence, please, before the next movie. You can hear me okay? One sentence, please.
Go ahead.
Okay. You can hear me okay?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Very important The children that you're seeing in this movie and in the coming movie, these are the children in front who are right now fighting Israel. When you hear about Hamas army and then casualties, these are the casualties. The majority of the armed personnel of Hamas are under 14. And the Hamas Health Ministry is now making a program, a movie and a booklet to show all the so-called innocent children who were killed without mentioning that they were armed. So now the next movie, which is called UNRWA Child Soldier, shows the children being trained with lethal weapons along the fence, the Gaza fence, exactly where the attacks took place on October 7th. So let's take a look at that, and it speaks for itself. Thank you.
Hamas and Islamic Jihad Summer Camps 2021. The wage. Schools spent their summer vacation.
مخيم طلائع التحرير سيف القدس للعام 2021. الله أكبر ولله الحمد.
احنا جيل فلسطين، احنا بنعشق الشهاده.
والله احنا نجاهد عشان القدس وعشان وطننا ونموت شهداء.
هاي جيل التحرير، هان بنحرر فلسطين والقدس وكل الدول المحتله.
نتدرب عشان نحارب اليهود لما أكبر وندافع عن القدس وعن فلسطين. نتدرب ونستعد لأي حرب جاية، لأن نحن الجيل الجديد الذي يعود لأرضه وسنحرر الأقصى بإذن الله.
The world has witnessed every year over the past decade, UNRWA students, even those who have not yet finished elementary school, are lured to participate in summer camps for armed guerrilla warfare. These children, who should expect UNRWA to provide a normal summer vacation environment, fall prey to terror groups that lurk everywhere, or are sent to these programs by their own parents. This summer, armed operatives signed up tens of thousands of UNRWA students ages 10 to 17 for summer camps offering extensive military training. Recruitment took place in mosques and at registration tables throughout the Gaza Strip.
إن صراعنا مع عدونا هو صراع على الجيل، ومن يكسب الجيل في النهاية يكسب المعركة.
Terrorist bases belonging to Hamas and Islamic Jihad, the youngsters experienced intense military discipline and systematic indoctrination with one objective in mind: to fight and die for jihad and to annihilate the Jewish state.
احنا جيل التحرير وهذه الأرض إلنا، واليهود مش راح يضلوا على هذه الأرض. أنا بقول لهم إنهم يرجعوا من حيث أتوا، اطلعوا جبل بيتكم وإحنا راح نحرر هذه الأرض. إذا مات شهيد راح يجي بداله 1000 شهيد.
At the summer camps, UNRWA youngsters learned to view the United States and Israel as the devil, the ultimate enemy. They trampled on the flags of both nations and set them afire.
سنعمل أن تستمر كدوة الصراع حتى يوقن بأنه لا مكان له إلا الرحيل.
اليوم احنا عند مخيمات سيف القدس اقترب الوعد حتى نبني اجسامنا واجسادنا حتى نقهر بني صهيون ونرجع على اراضينا المحتله. كان اليهود ما لهمش قيمه هنا، يعني ما لهمش ارض. نتدرب نجاهد في سبيل الله ونستشهد ان شاء الله في سبيل الله.
تكبير تكبير.
حلمي انه اطلع اني يعني اصير دكتور ومقاوم، يعني علم مع جهاد في سبيل الله، وعشان نحرر فلسطين ونطهرها من اليهود من الاحتلال الصهيوني المجرم.
مفيش حاجة اسمها دولة إسرائيل أصلا عشان يكون لهم عاصمة قبل كل شيء. إذا القدس عاصمة فلسطين الأبدية.
Learned how to use automatic weapons of all kinds. Instructors taught them how to assemble each weapon, hold it correctly, and operate it.
اول اشي تدريب، اول اشي يعلمونا طريقه اسم السلاح وفك السلاح وكيف تنظيم. ثاني اشي طريقه حمل السلاح. ثالث اشي عندك التدريب القوي من تحت الزحف تدريب. ثالث اشي ان نحمل وكيف نطخ لقدام، نتعلم كيف نطخ ونصوب الاهداف القريبه، ونتعلم على الاسلحه بانواعها. المدربين ما شاء الله عليهم هان بيعلموا كل انواع الاسلحه هان.
The terrorists working as camp instructors provided them with detailed descriptions of the mortars used by Hamas and Islamic Jihad, and even of the tanks used by the Israel Defense Forces. The UNRWA youngsters practiced fighting in built-up areas, as well as commandeering a vehicle.
احنا ما بنقدر نحرر الا بالسلاح، زي ما هم بحاربونا بالسلاح احنا حنحرر بالسلاح. هي هيك المعادله، ما بيفهموا الا بلغه السلاح.
One exercise featured a mock-up of an Israeli tank. The idea was to teach the children how to sneak up on a tank and kidnap Israeli soldiers.
عشان هيك احنا بنحارب وبنتعلم من الصغر. عشان ايش؟ عشان لما نكبر نبقى مستعدين لمقاتلة اليهود وتطردهم من البلد، لانه هذه مش بلدهم، يرجعوا على بلدهم. هذه مش بلدهم، هذه بلدنا. لما اكبر بدي استشهد واعمل عمليات مدافعة عن وطني وعن ارضي. هذه فلسطين. انا والله نفسي استشهد.
واحنا رجال محمد. نعلمهم فن القتال مع هذا العدو المغتصب الذي اغتصب أرضنا، فنحن سنعد هذا الجيل ومن أجل أن نفجر جماجم هذا العدو.
من تحت الارض نخرج اليكم، ندق الرعب في قلوبكم، ومن فوق نلقى بصواريخنا نقطعكم أجسام.
Top commanders from Hamas and Islamic Jihad were in charge of the military training and stated clearly that the goal was for the youngsters to take part in the future battle against Israel. The children attending the summer camps were taught about their so-called inalienable right of return to cities inside Israel, such as Jaffa, Lod, Haifa, Beersheba, Ashdod, and Ashkelon. With these cities just kilometers away, they were told that a return was literally in reach.
ان شاء الله بدنا نرجع، وان شاء الله كل كتاب القسم حيكونوا معنا، لانه هذه بلدنا الاصليه فحنحررها غصب عنه.
ان الاحتلال الصهيوني طرد ابائنا واجدادنا من اجلنا نضحي في دمنا ونرجع حيفا ونجاهد.
Girls affiliated with Islamic Jihad happily recited the mantras of terror. They are an integral part of the movement, meant to show that terrorism is not a male-dominated system.
لابد لنا ان
نقوم ببناء جيل قرآني واعي. لابد لنا كأمهات فلسطينيات أن نرسل أبناؤنا إلى هذه الأماكن لنزرع فيهم حب البلاد، حب فلسطين، حب الجهاد.
لابد أن كل امرأة منا تكون أم الشهيد، أخت الشهيد، يعني نزيد الوعي الثقافي عند أبنائنا حتى يجي يوم وهذه الأطفال يصير يعني مقاومة وتصير تدافع هي عن الأرض ونرجعها إلها.
The women of Islamic Jihad bestowed the legacy of their cause on the next generation. Notably, the summer camps featured the photos of female suicide bombers who blew themselves up to murder Jews.
أنا بلدة الأصلية بلدة يبنى، حنعود عليها بالحجر والسكينة. هم أصلا أعداء ويهود. هم من هم اليهود؟ هم طبعا قبائل تجمعت من كل دول العالم وأجد كونوا لهم وطن كما يدعون لهم في فلسطين.
Summer camps drew to a close. Each camper received a certificate of appreciation, complete with his photo, attesting to the completion of formal weapons training and a readiness to fight the Jews. UNRWA students, these photos depicted them with automatic weapons and showed them imbued with ideological motivation.
الذين يشبهون المجاهدين في أعمالهم ويتشبهون بهم وهم مجاهدون المستقبل.
Clearly, the Hamas and Islamic Jihad summer camps have become training grounds for the vilification of Israel. UNRWA teachers and textbooks complement this with an ideology and curriculum that promotes armed struggle for the right of return. Last May, the most recent outbreak of anti-Israel violence in Gaza exposed a tunnel dug by Hamas under a school in UNRWA's Zaytun refugee camp. Here is the evidence. Hamas thus takes the UNRWA children captive not only during the summer, but during the school year itself. UNRWA students constitute a future terror army aimed at liquidating Israel based on the illusion of a right of return. UNRWA can no longer act as if it does not know. UNRWA is proud of its 400 schools in Gaza, Judea and Samaria, and Jerusalem. It allocates 58% of its budget for an education system that indoctrinates a new generation for war. In essence, it has abandoned its students. The time has come for UNRWA to teach peace and coexistence during both the school year and summer vacation. The time has come for the world to demand oversight of UNRWA schools. The time has come for donor nations to put an end to UNRWA anarchy.
Thank you, David.
My pleasure. What we have here are a statement. We'll keep speaking while we see the laws of the United Nations which forbid the arming of children. Now, our hope is to take this to 6 parliaments in the world. We have translated this into German, into Swedish, and into French, and that's where we intend to take it. And I must say that it may surprise all of you, but 72 million people, excuse me, 7.2 million people have seen these videos in the last 2 months after many, many years of no one seeing it. And our hope is to be able to present this to staffers of Congress, and it all requires sponsorship and work and the ability, again, one of the people who contacted me on this dialogue remembers me in the peace movement when we were hoping that there would be a partner for peace. Unfortunately, that did not happen. So those are some thoughts, and we're pleased to work with everyone. And we're in a situation now where people are more open to listening than ever before. And now we have a new thing, which I hope that people will pick up on, the fact that, as you know, if you follow the news in the last few months, many weapons were found in UNRWA schools. Well, the army hasn't gone into the UNRWA schools in Bethlehem or in Jerusalem, and it's very important to see what's going on there. The State Department spokesman, in answer to our question, said, "Oh, it doesn't exist." Well, let's take a look to see if it does exist.
Thank you so much. As the common expression goes, one picture is worth 1,000 words. You know, we can read about UNRWA, you know, we could look at the textbooks, but the videotapes are absolutely chilling. And as we know right now, today, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Jerusalem, trying to propose yet again another pause, which Hamas says wants to be a permanent pause. Meantime, in Judea and Samaria, or in the West Bank, if you will, according to the Palestinian Center for Survey and Research, Khalil Shikaki's polling center in Ramallah, 82% of the people polled were in favor of the acts of October 7th. So how can it ever be possible to have peace as long as such an educational system is in existence?
But what we faced is denial all along, and because of what happened on October 7th, it became real. All of the student activities, I can go through all our movies. We were hoping to see another theme, but the children are being prepared now. At this point, at this time, the children are being prepared for next summer. Now, your input to the U.S. Embassy. The U.S. Embassy, you can find them on the web. Your input while Blinken is in Israel. Ask him if he's ever seen these videos. Now, we did make a showing for John Kerry when he was in power and when he was in the State Department. And now this is the time. So far, the U.S. Embassy, the current U.S. Embassy, has not allowed us to make a presentation there like we did under John Kerry. It's very important. They're asking him, has he seen the videos? Has he seen the curriculum? We've translated the whole curriculum, and this whole business that we have someone at the State Department asking questions. They said the curriculum is for peace. The curriculum is something we can work with, and some, I don't know to what extent this has been publicized, but the American government now saying we will recognize a Palestinian state. Now, this is not just a Palestinian. This is a PLO Hamas state, not just a Palestinian state. And this is the more feedback people give, the better. Very, very important. And that's very the influence of public opinion at this point is crucial. And public opinion is there are a few people who make their voices heard. And that's the important thing. And that's the important thing of what Sarah's doing here in helping people like the experts that we have to make presentations. And we have 4 experts who are Arabic speaking on the PhD level. We'll be pleased to bring them to your homes through Skype and also in person. And when you come to Jerusalem, ask for a session with our experts. This is very important because we have to deal with a whole world of people who do not know.
Okay, and now I am going to hand it over to my wonderful colleague, Joseph Epstein, who is going to read some of the questions that have come in and perhaps pose some of his own. Joseph?
Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you so much, David. So we have quite a few questions from the audience. One that we got a few times is about the fact that a lot of what UNRWA has been doing to really brainwash Palestinians has been really known to people for decades. Can you talk about what's being done to condemn them and or more importantly, what's being done to influence or change UNRWA or the education system in general in the West Bank and Gaza?
Well, unfortunately, all attempts to provide input, and I was involved with a team of people who prepared a peace curriculum, but it was declared to be a capital crime to use any of that material. And this wasn't known. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that when the new school books came out in 2000, they were supposed to be school books for peace, and there was a peace curriculum, but there was a sleight of hand here. It was switched, and it was from the Vatican. We were able to see the difference because the Vatican had asked for the peace curriculum and they didn't get it. So it does exist, and at any time. And what's very important is the influence of donor countries. If donors in countries were to say, you're not going to get a penny if you don't change your curriculum, that would change things. But that's not happening from any country. And the worst is Germany. Germany has said they're not giving money from the general fund, but there's 12 German foundations. You can find them on our site, IsraelBehindTheNews.com, under the word Merkel, and you'll see the most prominent German foundations are behind the direct funding and operation of the schools. Very important. And so again, all the input, again, you asked the right question, Joseph, and the people who asked, what about input to change it? There is input, but it's being ignored, but no one is pushing it. And no one is pushing it to say, if you don't make this change, that won't happen. Remember, the U.S. UNRWA Accord, which is on our site, IsraelBehindTheNews.com, hold them to the fire. And this is not a right-wing or left-wing issue. This is a very clear humanitarian issue, which anyone can support.
Thank you. So as a follow-up to that question, why do you think it is that donor countries aren't more insistent when it comes to brainwashing or, seeing these very brutal images?
If you see the UNRWA website, or if you see the article that was written 2 days ago by the New York Times, by the Foreign Minister of Norway in the front page New York Times, you will not have any idea there's any problem. As a matter of fact, if you look at the UNRWA website, you'll give money to their schools. You'll think it's the best thing since I don't know what. It's there, and the influence, and they work very hard on influencing. The UNRWA public relations campaign is unbelievable in terms of its ability to misinform and disinform, and that's what affects people. No one can imagine the dissonance between the reality and the falsification of what's going on there. Now, again, people don't ask the questions, and that's the problem. Of course, there's the implicit problem that people who they feel if they criticize the Palestinian Authority, which reports to the Palestine Liberation Organization and other terror groups, they're afraid. And the 12 German foundations, all who support Palestinian education, all work with the PFLP, one of the most important and vicious terrorist organizations, and they're on the FTO list, the Foreign Terrorist Organization watch list that the State Department and even the UN puts out. Very important. So the PFLP has a great influence through German foundations.
Do you believe that after the revelations that so many UNRWA members are actually also members of terrorist organizations such as Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and the fact that, multiple UNRWA members took part in the October 7th massacre, do you think there will be more pressure to make UNRWA change, serious pressure, or do you think it will just make the headlines for a little bit and then go away?
It depends on you. It depends on if 30 people a day were to send a personal note to Blinken on this, it would have a great effect. Through the United Nations Correspondents Association, I have it on my website, you have a list of all the spokespeople for the donor nation and for the UN. I had a teacher named Eliezer Jaffe, may he rest in peace, who used to say, a problem is a problem when someone makes it into a problem. If 30, 40 people, that's all it takes. If Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, were to get lots and lots of letters, because we showed him the school books. We're in touch with one of the people in his office. Now, the people on the other side who want them to ignore it, they're pushing them to ignore this stuff, saying there were a bunch of they call us names and say we're not for peace. So what I ask you is very easy to correspond with, not petitions, individual letters to Guterres. And remember, Guterres saw this book, which praises a terrorist, which is put into their curriculum. He saw it with his own eyes, and he asked that it be removed. I don't know if he knows it was put back in. Very important. Your input is what's going to make a difference. Now, I want to address something extremely important. There was a very important congressional committee meeting 2 days ago on Capitol Hill with the Foreign Relations Committee dealing with UNRWA for the first time in years. Now, there's a mistake that people make, which in honest, they were talking from their hearts. People think that if the United States makes a decision, that will affect everyone. No, let's get together the different donor countries. I ask maybe Emet would do it. Bring together ambassadors from different places, show them this material, work together. Very important that we not be America focused. Very important that we get. We've been in the Swedish Parliament 5 times, in the Bundestag twice. These are they're ready to listen. There's no diplomat not ready to listen unless he's been bought off or something. They're ready to listen so long as we keep it straight and not keep it in the Orthodox communities only. Very important to have seminars in all the major streams of Judaism to present this material, not as a right-wing thing, not as an anti-peace thing, but very important. It depends on you. And again, they are very sensitive. If they get 30 or 40 letters, that's at UNRWA, at the UN itself. And it's important that while Blinken is in Israel, through the U.S. Embassy, send him letters. Are you looking at their schools? Because he's given them a kosher card, and that doesn't have to happen if you give him feedback. A few letters sent will have a long way to go.
So we have quite a few comments asking about if there's, if you have some resources, if you could share links to the videos so that people could be armed with information in order to come to this issue.
When I first presented videos on the Capitol Hill, go back 25 years, and it was very hard. We had these links that we didn't have links then. We had to go into meet Arab journalists on the Gaza border in a very get one of those big DVD, what were they called, VHSs, and take it back and sneak it in and all this. Now it's easy. If you have an index finger, you push a button on these investigative movies. The top of our site, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. You push it and see it, and that's what it takes. Now we need help. We need funds to translate this into all languages, obviously, and to make presentations in all languages. It's very important to do that. And I have been at presentations in Geneva at the UN. It's appreciated. Now, the government of Israel would prefer to have a laissez-faire approach. Fine. That's they want this to be a citizen's approach, but it's very important that everyone look at the material, and also our translations of the school books on the front page, or on the homepage of our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. It's there. But again, it requires an index finger and the willing to. People say, "How do I get to see your books?" Well, it's right there, and it's something that's not hidden. And all attempts to bring in a peace curriculum, unfortunately, have been rejected, and that's a serious problem, because it could have happened. And the rabbis I know who are in dialogue with the Palestinians praised it, but unfortunately, the rabbis who are fighting for Palestinian human rights have also not fought to protect them with a peace curriculum, insisting on a peace curriculum, and preserving the rights of Palestinian kids to not have to suffer. I want to say something. When you see this movie again, right, going on the site, just imagine how many of these children that we interviewed were killed in the last few months, and that it breaks my heart to think about.
Thank you so much. So for our audience, I've actually posted a link to David Bedein's website in the chat. So if you go in the chat and you click on it, you can see all the resources that have been shown today and even more. And now to move on to another question, we've had quite a few on the UNHCR, and if there have been any efforts to have the UNHCR take over the role of UNRWA.
Okay, well, here's what's going on there. There's not good news on that because of a technical issue. The mistake made on DC in the hearings was as if UNHCR can take over for UNRWA. They can't. There's a bylaw which forbids it. Forget about it. What you can do is to ask UNRWA to use UNHCR principles. That you can do. You can make it a very clear issue to members, if you're in the U.S., to members of the U.S. Congress. If you're a European citizen, to members of the parliamentary groups that deal with the UN. Very easy. Please apply the UNHCR principles within UNRWA. It can be done. There's nothing that prevents it from being done. But you cannot take one UN. Unfortunately, this is what I found out from speaking 3 times at the UN Press Association. You cannot take the UNHCR and replace it with UNRWA. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is.
Thank you so much. So if UNRWA can't be dissolved, and you're hoping that it can be changed, is the only way you see it being changed through pressure from donor countries, or is there
Absolutely. Absolutely. Remember, and I have the principles of what policy changes need to be made on the front page of our site. Number 1, cancel their curriculum. There's a new curriculum worse than ever before. Number 2, disarm them. Make sure that all the donor nations are asking that UNRWA be disarmed. get rid of any terrorists who are on the books working for UNRWA, and use UNHCR principles that I just mentioned, and the issue of an audit. We interviewed major ambassadors who were proud to say that they were giving money in cash to UNRWA. And that's the majority, most of the money of the $1.6 billion of UNRWA is coming in cash. What can happen with cash? Use your imagination, especially since we're dealing with terrorist entities. And how much money that went to medical services that wound up in the hands of terrorists, and also black marketing, and also sex trafficking, incidentally. We have a proposal to do if anyone wants to see it, write to us. We have a proposal to do a whole overhaul of the financial system of UNRWA. But again, it takes involvement, takes the ability to write a one page letter or one paragraph letter. We want to see on the books what you're doing. And the donor nations, I have them listed on our site. Each of them, they're very nervous when they get letters, and they act actually after they see it. Encourage all the donor countries to have sessions to deal with these issues, and come over to Jerusalem so we can have, if someone would like to sponsor it, a major conference of the donor nations to talk with one another. And if we're wrong, we're wrong. But we haven't been proven wrong yet, because the other side is so transparent in terms of their corruption. I mean, that's something very important. Look what we show you when you see there are 24 movies. It's total transparency in terms of openness, open support of terror, open support of corruption. There's no intrigue here. They know exactly what they're doing, as opposed to the Norwegian. Now, I think that, by the way, since Norway is a major donor and they're so proud to have that one pager on the front page of the New York Times, confront them. And they would be very nervous about it, but our job is to make people nervous.
Thank you. So another question that we've got is the amount of brainwashing for over decades has obviously left its mark. How long do you think it would take to prepare the next generation for maybe some sort of peace even with Israel?
My uncle who was maybe watching this, worked in programs of the American Army to involve in denazification. And that's one of the issues of denazification has never really been tested, because what happened with the youngsters who were in Hitler Youth, they went over to hating the communists. But this is not something that's really been tested. There's a whole generation now that, when did the school system begin of this? It's not hatred, it's training them to kill. That was August 1st, 2000. Between 1993 and 2000, there was a hope that there would be a curriculum for peace. And Peres, many other people, Israeli government officials in the private sector, they were pushing that. However, it never happened, because there wasn't a continuity with that. So it's going to take a long time. 2000 to now is 24 years. It's 24 years of brainwashing. And by the way, it's a matter of fact to think about it. Every child since 2000 has been taught systematically that the only reason UNRWA exists and the only reason you're in terrible conditions in the refugee camps is because you were forced to be there by Israel. That's what they all think. And by the way, in terms of American Jewish education today, that's what people think. Because I've done a lot of dialogue with youngsters, and that's what they think. So we have to clean out a lot of brain tissue here and put in the truth. It's not easy.
Thank you so much, David Bedein. I really want to thank you for the very, very valuable footage. As I spoke about last week, this week again, I want to mention the UNRWA Accountability and Transparency Act. They define a Palestinian refugee as someone who had lived in the region of Mandatory Palestine from June 1946 to May 1948, with maybe one generation. The bill withholds U.S. funding for UNRWA unless the Department of State can certify that UNRWA staff, partners, and funding have not in any way been affiliated with terrorism, or disseminating any rhetoric about terrorism, such as calling for the destruction of Israel or describing Israel as occupiers or settlers. Additionally, the State Department must certify that UNRWA, 1, is subject to comprehensive independent financial audits.
Absolutely.
Is not affiliated with financial institutions complicit in money laundering or terror financing. So that's HR 1102. It is introduced by Chip Roy. There are 35 sponsors, and S431. And this is introduced by Chairman of the Senate Foreign Affairs or former Senate Foreign Affairs Committee leader James Risch. So we need all of the support that we can get on that. And once again, I ask you to please support the Center for Nearest Policy Research, which is sfnpr.org. And please, we need your support for AMET to continue our valuable work of getting this information out. That's amet.org, ametonline.org. We work very hard. We're on Capitol Hill several times a week, every week, getting this information out to our members of Congress. We have these webinars every single week, and we write and publish at least one article a week. And we work incredibly hard. So thank you so much for your support. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sarah.